Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We were listening to the tunes of our sister Tony Jones, who we love and adore. And we are continuing in our discussion of releasing hidden contracts and agreements. I am Latanya Taylor, who will be your facilitator today, affectionately known as the Rev Coach, the Juicy Spirit Mama, the Priestess of Purpose, Pleasure, Passion, and Profits. And it's my honor to hold this space for us today in our Wednesday Tribe Talk, okay? So when you join in, just say hello, even if you're watching the replay. Tag a sister, call a sister in. We're going to get in here and build off of our last week. If you weren't here with us last week, you'll see me playing with this thing, a lot today. But if you weren't here last week, I want to do a little bit of a recap. We used the analogy last week of the school cafeteria. I asked you to think about how you felt when you went into your school cafeteria. We walked through the line as though we were going to go pick up our lunch trays in the school cafeteria. We talked about where did you sit in the school cafeteria and who were the different types of people that were at your table or nearby at other tables. And we talked about those different types, right? In order for us to begin to look at some of our human behavior and just the scratch of the surface of some of the archetypes, that's our beginning of looking at some of our contracts, agreements, and archetypes. And we looked at some of the ways that our contracts show up, right? We looked at how some of our contracts showed up right there in that school cafeteria, that as an analogy. Well, we're going to continue to build off of that today. And we talked about overall about using somebody else's voice, right? Cookie cutters that don't work for our business or for our relationships. We talked about spending our energy using systems that were broken in the first place in our business, in our love, in our marriages, in our dating life, in our family structure as well. We talked about filters for information coming in and going out. And then we talked about the types of contracts: mental, spiritual, or / religious, and they're not the same, cultural, and we also talked about code switching, which is environmental. So we talked about some of those types of contracts on a preliminary level. Of course, this is very general. The specific is something that we are going to be doing together in an upcoming workshop that I've been telling you about. Consider this your feminine leadership source code. If you know anything about coding, then you'll understand the language of this idea of coding, you doing your own coding. Women in coding and girls in coding is a big deal in the tech world, because coders is coding is language that you put into the computer for it to be able to do certain things to the software and the hardware. And so many of us have already come with these codes. And so before we can even get into decoding today, which I do want to scratch that surface a little bit, we got to understand that we have codes. And so I asked some questions last week on last week's video, about 6 or 7 questions, and we got to an agreement that nothing just happened, right? That is our recap from last week. And so when we're talking about this idea, right, of our hidden contracts and agreements, we started to look and dig around and explore on what they could be. And so I want to stay with the idea of school, right, and the cafeteria, but I want to advance us a little further beyond the cafeteria, right? And I want to take us even to now. It's 10 years later, or 5. I don't know how soon we tend to have class reunions. How many of you have been to your class reunion? Just raise your hand or put a 1 in the chat if you've been to your class reunion. Did you go for your 5-year, 10-year, 20-year? Which one did you go to for your class reunion? I think I went to my 10-year class reunion. I can't remember. It took me a minute. I didn't go right away, right? And then there are some people who don't miss class reunion. But if you can remember the very first class reunion that you went to, okay, so we got some ones who have gone, and some folks said that they've been to their 10-year reunion, okay? So so someone else has said that we do it every 5 years. Doc, you said we do it every 5 years. Okay, cool. So, but can you remember the very first one that you went to, the very first class reunion that you went to, particularly if you moved away from your hometown, right? How many of you, take a poll again. How many of you moved away from your hometown? You went to college somewhere else, or you went to the military, or you just relocated from your hometown and you came back and you went, or let's say, let me know in the chat if you left your hometown. Just say, hey, I left, let me know. I relocated. Okay. And then this still applies if you stay put, because then everybody came into town, right? For class reunion. The people who did move out of town came into town. And so when you got to okay, you say I've been to class reunion, but I haven't returned since. They're a lot of fun if you weren't traumatized in school. Okay. All right. So somebody relocated. Okay. From Michigan. Shout out to Michigan. Who else we have in the house? I know we got Mississippi. We got Michigan in the house. Who else do we have in the house? Mississippi, Michigan. Shout out your home state. Okay. Okay. Relocated, awkward returning, felt out of place. Okay, cool, good. Let's build off of that statement right there. In fact, let me put that there. Okay. All right. Making the Art of Love is her name. That's Dr. Pam, y'all. I don't know. We got these fancy names now, child. So then we have another one said, I went to my 10-year reunion and haven't returned. Sorry if you haven't put your name in the system, I can't see it, but you can do it at any time. Okay, so we say Detroit, Michigan in the house. Shout out Michigan in the house. We got Mississippi in the house. Okay, we got somebody who's never been to a class reunion in the house. Okay. All right, so you will enjoy this. Who is this? LaShannon, I've been looking for you. What's up, sis? Alafia to you, my love. Okay, so listen. We're moving from the cafeteria to the class reunion. When you went to your class reunion, oh, it's you, Jacera. Okay, you got to put your name. Okay, you got to put your name. And if you could just come in here and shout out your city, because I want to know if you've been to your class reunion, and if you've been, what year did you go? But if you've been to your class reunion, can you remember when you got there, right? And some of your friends, did you recognize them? Did it take you a minute? Probably 10-year, you still recognized your friends, right? Now, those of us who've been to 20-year, we got up to the 20-year reunion, you know that sometimes it might take you and be like, oh, that's such and such. She was on the dance team. Oh, that was our football player. Come on now, y'all know. Come on, talk to me. And then we had one sister who said it was awkward for her, right? It was awkward for her in her class reunion, going to her class reunion. But it brings up all types of things from those contracts in that cafeteria. Some of us, it can bring up that awkwardness, right? But you have lived 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. You've created new contracts and agreements. Some of them not so hidden, but some of the ones that are hidden, let's just take a few. Let's just take an example. You ever been to the class reunion and you could see life, the life that someone lived on them? Come on now. You can see the person who has a contract with health and wellness. They may have gone to the military. They may have been drafted to the NFL or to the NBA, and they look stellar. You like to look at them. You may have someone who had a contract with beauty, and they come back. They may, at school they could have been the nerd contract, right? They could, and then they come back and they're all beauty. I know I was a skinny girl, and so then I came back with curves, honey, and hips and things, you know. And so the people who may not have been looking before were looking different when they saw me in the 10, 15, and 20. Okay. What about you? What about you? Is that you? Did you walk different? We already heard awkward, but how many of you walked more confidently into that class reunion, right? But even with the hidden contracts, there are other contracts that we could have seen. So before we can decode the contracts and agreements, before we can get to the decoding conversation, we have to be able to see them, right? In order to release them, you have to be able to see the contracts and agreements that we are in. Other people can sometimes see the contracts and agreements that we have. That's why I'm asking you, what did you see in your class reunion? Put it in the comments. I want to call out a few things you saw. I gave some examples, right? We've seen the people who may have had children early. Come on, help me out. Some people, they can come back, they have 2 and 3 children. Some people had children in high school, so now they have grandchildren, or their children were in college, and you may have just be getting your life on a certain track after college. Come on now, y'all with me? Come on, let's take a walk, because a walk through a little bit of memory lane, because sometimes it's easier to digest and look at this thing from an objective point of view, because sometimes when we're too close to a thing, it's still hidden to us. And in many ways, we've made agreements that certain things that are close to us, for them to be hidden. So I didn't want to go here. I was waiting on you all to tell me in the comments. Come on. Sometimes you can see a person that's been on drugs, right? How do they look? They look different. They were in a contract and agreement that was hidden, that you probably didn't know about while in their life, that led them down a particular path. So there's the contract of motherhood, wifehood. By the time we come into to the class reunion, right? We see people, we see their life as evidence on them. What contract? Dr. Pam says some were smaller, some were bigger, some were addicted to drugs. Yes, absolutely. Some were smaller, some were bigger, some were addicted to drugs, right? Okay. And then we see certain people, it looks like they never changed, right? They just never changed. My sister says, very true. People in a contract with freedom appear to be light and youthful. Okay. Listen, I went away to school at one point and I came back wearing headpieces. Now, I didn't attend a lot of class reunions when I was in a very strict religion. How many of you can relate that you didn't attend and you did not participate in certain social activities because of your belief system? You were in a contract and an agreement that wasn't something that you participated in. At one point, I wore a headpiece and was all covered up, and so class reunions were not a priority for me, because these are hidden contracts and agreements. So even though maybe I wasn't even there, there are people who maybe you haven't even seen since you graduated. They're in a contract and agreement that you don't know anything about as well. Yes. Come on now, work with me with this class reunion. I won't be in front of you long today. But the point is, we have to be able to see them for ourselves. And sometimes we can see them in other people. Oh, this is good. Um, Dr. Pam is the only one talking today, right? she said, yep, Apostolic Church kept me away for a while. Thank you. So you were in a contract and an agreement with church. But see, what happens is we keep moving in our lives and we don't recognize that we were in these contracts and agreement. And what happens is they collect and we pay taxes on it with our choices and decisions, or when we get ready to make a move in our life, sometimes a power move, because these contracts and agreements that we're talking about in a light, whimsical way have been hidden from us, hidden from people in our lives that matter. They don't know why we move the way that we move. I want to go a little bit further and ask you some more questions today, and then I'm gonna get up out of here, because I know that this subject has really got your juices flowing, and I appreciate the engagement on the replay and all of the people who have been really engaging this, because it is through this engagement that we're going to uncover, discover, and recover together. Okay. The question that you get to ask yourself when we say, do I want to see in order to release the contracts? Do I want to see them? Do I want to take a look at this? Because this is part 2 of releasing. We just laid the foundation last week, right? Yes, thank you, sis. We pay taxes. Oh, okay, Jasera, all right. We pay taxes on them. The second question is, am I willing to see hidden contracts and agreements that block my money, my mission in life, my communication, or my creation? Am I willing to see the hidden contracts and agreements that block me? I would even go as far as to say that blocks you. I did say communication. I'll say it again: your money, your mission, which is your purpose. Because, and I'm trying not to go into it too much. When I say your mission, we are born to do more than just pay bills. We are born to do more than just survive. We talked about the contract that you were born with, the contract that you inherited, the destiny on your life. You know, I just heard to share this real quick. I want to use something really powerful that spoke to me. Can I take a minute from asking a couple of questions? Tell me, let me know, give me a yes in the comments if I could take a minute to give this download that I just got. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. I want to move a minute as I'm asking you these questions to another profound story, a biblical story that some of us can relate to. You all know the story of Samson and Delilah, yeah? You know a little bit of the context, and I'm not going to preach or nothing, but if you know a little bit of the context, Samson was born with power in his hair. Yes, yes. Y'all with me? He was born with a sacred contract, really into a sacred priesthood with power, with superpowers even. He was anointed. They knew who he was when he was born. You know, the scriptures say, I know who you were when you were knitted in your mother's womb. Samson is a good analogy for us to look at. And yet we have this free will. We can have these sacred contracts, this anointing on our life. We have something in us that is purposeful for a contribution greater than just paying bills, greater than the life we might be currently living now. Yet Samson kept laying his head in the wrong lap. Come on now. What was going on with Samson that he kept laying his head in the wrong lap? And then the story goes, and I'm fast forwarding through the story, of course, and the story goes on that they were plotting against Samson. to access his power, take his power. I don't know why Spirit gave me this. Who is this for? Who is this for? Let me know if it's you. Let me know if it's you. And eventually, he would always get out of the situations. Oh, come on, somebody. He would get out of the situations until he met Delilah. And so, in the name of love and charm and seduction, he got caught slipping. Anybody ever been in a situation where you've been caught slipping? And so he was caught slipping, and they cut his hair. And then they proceeded with their agenda. He almost didn't know what happened to him. How did I end up here? Or maybe he did. Come on now, Samson. If you've been Samson, you may have been Delilah. You may have been sometimes the people, who was in the courtyard, who was on the team plotting. I don't know. You could be recovering. That was a contract. And that's why we got to see what contracts we go into by default, because we all come with a contract by destiny and design. That's me. Sorry. Had to do that. By destiny or design. But some of us are still living in the default contracts and the hidden ones. So can I proceed with the questions? Am I willing to see the hidden contracts and agreements that block me? Okay? That block my money, my purpose, my pleasure, my passion, my profits. That's another way I'm going to say that. What changes in my life create new contracts and agreements with myself and with others? Because there in contracts, there are subcontracts, right? Internal contracts, external contracts, known contracts, unknown contracts, willing contracts, unwilling contracts. And here's some examples. Trauma can create an internal contract because of an external contract that you were unwilling to participate in, but maybe you had to. Trauma can reroute your contracts from your destiny or your design. Come on now, talk back to me. Interruptions in our life, because life happens. Somebody just look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, life happens. I got married when I was 19. That was not the plan that I left high school and entered into college with. But interruptions like divorce, death, accidents can sometimes create new contracts that weren't in alignment with what we originally had planned. Health crisis can create new contracts that with ourselves, with our body, with how we move in the world. There are also some noble ones. New birth, you're giving birth to, you get pregnant. You get married, you get pregnant. Maybe you planned it, maybe you didn't plan it. Right? Marriage, and then comes parenting. So now all of the things that you may have set up for yourself, these things now have created new contracts for you. Some of us choose to go to school, and we are in extended programs. And so one of the ways that we may define ourselves is through our degrees, and we're in contracts with schools and with certifications and that type of thing. And so those are noble ones. And when I talk about health crisis, I would be remiss in my duty if I did not look at addiction and recovery. That's a new contract. So when you go to this class reunion 10 years in, 20 years in, what do we see? We see people that have evolved through and moved through different phases of their contracts and agreements. Right? Health can also be considered grief and loss, because if there's divorce, if there's death, if there's health crisis, there's a recovery period, there's a grief period, right? And sometimes other people don't take into account what that you might not be on your timeline. Relocation can also affect your contract, because you got to learn a new place over again, right? Changes in institutions. And then there are several types of contracts that we have already established in our last talk, our last tribe talk. If you weren't there last week, go check it out. But then there are many legal contracts through the government and institutions that we're in. And how do you know you're in those contracts? It's because you need licensure. You have a birth certificate. That's the first one, right? And there's a whole story and history around that I can't even get into right now in terms of law and commerce. And they come with subcontracts. Then we have to have a license to drive. Then we have a license to get married, and so on and so forth. And some of these are man-made. So we have all of these legal contracts, secular contracts, and sacred contracts. Because my last question to you is, are you operating in your vocation or your avocation? Because some of us fell into going to college, getting a degree, and you feel like you have to be in contract with that degree, but you're called to do something else. Some of us may feel like we are in contract with that thing. Well, I went to medical school. We talked about that last week, right? Alafia, sister, I love you. So yes, come on now, listen, let's look at these contracts, noble ones and not so noble ones, right? Because this is the opportunity for us to be able to see them and make new choices in order for us to release them. In order to release anything, you have to be able to face it and see what are those contracts. You may have a contract with who you have been. And what happens when the contract changes? It expires or it's invalid because you have new information that sets you free from the contract, whether it expired, whether it's invalid because you have new information. There's certain contracts that are now are invalid and through treaties in the United States. That's what we're seeing happening in the banking system. And we can get all emotional about it and move into looking for the government to rescue us. But we don't understand how certain things were built, how this government was built. It was built on a contract of deceit, lies, and bloodshed. So what do we think we're going to see? Do you think that we are going to know and be told? Some things we're going to have to be willing to uncover and discover for ourselves. We're going to have to ask new questions, because a lot of contracts that we've been in default in the collective consciousness are ending. We keep talking about the age of Aquarius. This is one of the reasons why I'm reshaping the Queen's piece and doing the workshop, so that we can get in alignment and leverage our archetype, leverage our divine design. because certain things cannot be released in this season just willy-nilly. We need sacred containers to understand where we are personally with the internal ones and some of the external ones, because oftentimes we start with the external and then we bump into things not knowing that there are internal ones that are the true block, the true reason. Now, there's some people who have a contract with ease. Let's talk about the light stuff. Some of us have a contract with investing. Some of us have a contract with flow. Some of us have a contract with partnering and collaboration. Some of us have a contract with all of the things that we need in this sacred time. Some of us had to have the contracts from the old paradigm in our lives and in the world shift on us, just so that we could be shifted out of being on default, coming out of default. I see my brother here, the Mayflower Compact, one of the first illegal contracts upon this country was built. Absolutely. The peace and friendship treaty that is absolutely governing everything. The one that Richard Nixon did with the money. Now money is returning back to silver and gold, at being backed by silver and gold, and we're calling it a recession, we're calling it inflation, but what's really happening is we're returning to a system of the money being backed by what the Constitution says is real money. And let's talk about the Constitution. That's a contract. Who wrote it? Were they thinking about you? Did that apply to you? Our name has been changed in law so many times. Now we're in a contract with being Black, but many people are discovering and remembering that we were the indigenous people already here. I wasn't trying to go that direction, but my brother came in the comments and dropped a nugget, and I had to play with it. Many people are understanding, and some people already knew it intuitively, but the receipts are being dropped. Go check out Dane Calloway. I'm just here to make you think. If you need receipts, if you want to trace your bloodline, look at the contracts that have been hidden from us and violating us. This is why when we talk about reparations, you can't get reparations if you are not an immigrant. What you have to do when the indigenous things have been stolen from the indigenous people, you have to return it to them. But if you don't know that you're in a hidden contract and agreement and you're operating off of, why can they just mow down Black people? But what if in law you're not considered Black? It's invalid. Okay, I'll get off of that. And get back to our money, because and our mission and our purpose, because all of those have an archetype. Each one of them have subcontracts. And oftentimes we go into seminars, we go to school, we get good grades, and then we move into business and entrepreneurship. We move into our families. We move into love relationships off of contracts that we saw from other people that we inherited or that we heard, and we never thought about building our own sacred agreement or operating on the one that we were here destined and born to do, because it makes our life easier. It makes moving and power moves and answering the calling easier. When we're trying to live somebody else's life and use somebody else's voice and measurement system to determine where we should be, oftentimes we bump into what's called imposter syndrome, identity theft, in the collective and individually. And we are in a time and a season where things are happening at quantum speed. But if the banks are collapsing, we got to play. It is chess, not checkers, but the chess has been played for a long time. but we got to speed up how we're moving and how we're responding to our life, because it's not working for the empaths, the light workers, the creatives, the called, the healers, the set aside, the sacred ones who have been called in this time and this season. It is very important for us to be able to understand it on an individual level, just so that we can make room in our mind, in our spirit, in our body on a collective level, because no time is more precious than the one where we're in transition. And can we agree that we are in transition season? Even what's happening in the collective is archetypes. If you look, I talked about this in an earlier, maybe not the last one, but the one before. I talked about the jester, the court gesture. That's an archetype. The king is an archetype. The queen is an archetype on the chessboard. The pawn is an archetype. The pawn oftentimes is the 80% who refuse to wake up. You want to stay an employee. You want to get a check every 2 weeks. And nothing's wrong with that if you're living in your purpose and your passion. I could go on and on. The bishop. These are archetypes even on the chessboard. The chessboard itself is an archetype. It's symbolic. The way you move on the chessboard, is all symbolic. And so when we talked in the mastermind about playing the Queen's piece, it evolved. It evolved so naturally for us in this tribe and those who are new and coming, for us to be able to live by design, love by design, play with our money by design, be a contribution by design, not just by default. So when we talk about releasing them, answer some of these questions so that you can know that you are doing an act of freeing yourself. We're going to get more specific around April. The info is going out. I sent you a survey so that I can serve those of you who are attending, who are interested, who are recommending and referring specifically. This will not be a cookie cutter gathering either. We're going to focus in 3 main areas. The 3 areas that I know and feel confident about turning blind spots into breakthroughs: love, sex, and money. Purpose, pleasure, passion, and profits. Because it's time for us to play a different game. And it's time for us to do it by design. Now, when I get into the whole nationality and the political pieces and that type of thing, that's just my passion. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to research it. You don't have to buy into it. But if you do, it all connects together. Remember, we closed last week saying nothing just happens. Even what's happening in banking, the global currency that's in process right now, the truths that are being revealed, the ways that the public have been deceived regarding the health crisis, the information that's coming out. Nobody said conspiracy theorists were liars. They just made you question whether you should listen. But it all comes out. And so these sacred contracts and having these tools and being able to understand your archetype, your divine design, you can create new contracts. So next week, we're going to move into decoding, a little bit more decoding. But I want you to let me know, send me a note if you are willing to and ready and able to start looking so that you can release. I'm going to offer that formula of releasing them and creating new ones in our divine design workshop and really up level our feminine leadership source codes. Remember, You are the coder now. You may have been born with some codes. You may have some codes installed because of what life happened, what happened in life, life happened, what happened in life. But this is an opportunity for you to happen to your own life, and for us to continue to happen to our own life by design, by choice, and not by force. So I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Thank you for sharing this time with me today. And I'll continue the chat in the group. And if you're on YouTube, just let me know and tag me, and I'll come and continue the conversation with you there. Again, there's a survey attached in the description below. Please take the survey and get it back to me. It comes with a $50 gift coupon. And if you are in our community, download the app. It's so many ways to connect, okay? I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Have a wonderful, wonderful